Carolina State Auditor. I look for your vote and your support to continue servicing the citizens of North Carolina. Thank you.
Next up, our Commissioner of Insurance, Wayne Goodwin, running for re-election, Democrat as well. Welcome to the stage.
Good afternoon, everybody, and thank you for the invitation to join you at this conference. I am Wayne Goodwin, our current state insurance commissioner. I'm also a former legislator and longtime businessman and also an attorney with experience in insurance law. I am seeking a third term, and it's very vital for us to know some historical context about what this office is about and also about my proven record. As in every other state, North Carolina created this constitutional office at the request of the insurance industry because there were folks who were taking advantage of people and taking advantage of legitimate insurance business folks. They want to make sure that there are people out there playing by the rules. So over many years, every state has created an insurance sheriff in each state, and that's what the insurance commissioner is, and to ensure there's reasonable regulation. This post requires a keen balance between consumer protection and the industry. And you can't have one without the other. There's synergy there. You need somebody who has that balance and the ability to keep that balance in check. In that regards, during my 2 terms as our state insurance commissioner, through rate cuts, rebates, restitution, negotiations I've personally been involved in, I've saved our families and businesses over $2.4 billion. Many small businesses have benefited from this. Hundreds of new insurance companies and related businesses have come to North Carolina on my watch, and many at my request, as we bring businesses to this state. North Carolina has among the very lowest auto insurance premiums in the entire United States. And we have over 167 individual insurance companies writing auto insurance business here. And it's the 3rd most stable auto insurance market in the country. That's auto insurance. Let's talk about homeowners insurance. We have the lowest average homeowners insurance premiums in the South, with over 200 individual companies writing homeowners insurance. I am pressuring Congress and everybody else who can hear me about this that we need a private flood insurance market. We do not want to depend on the federal government for flood insurance and other things. In this race, you will hear others say, ladies and gentlemen, they want to streamline the Department of Insurance. They want to put more live people on the phone. They want to fight the federal government encroachment. They want to seek more companies and products to come here for our people, and they want to get away from the rate bureau. To be perfectly clear, ladies and gentlemen, I've done that. And I've done that through smart, strategic deregulation. And there's more to come. I'll give you a couple examples. For greater corporate creativity, for greater competition, and more business flexibility, I persuaded the legislature to allow our companies, our private businesses, to bypass the rate bureau, to let these insurance companies bypass the rate bureau. We already are seeing new products and services here that we haven't had before, and that's just a start. Another example of smart, targeted deregulation, I persuaded the legislature again to make us a captive insurance jurisdiction. Without the complex details, let me tell you just basically what this is. North Carolina has more insurance options. Its businesses can and have created their own insurance companies. That's why it's called captive insurance. And through that, businesses, North Carolina businesses, pay less in taxes, less in overhead for insurance. There are fewer government regulations, fewer hoops and hurdles to go past, and lower insurance costs. With this captive insurance law that I encouraged, and it passed successfully in the legislature unanimously, we have more than 100 new businesses that did not exist before because of that law that I encouraged. We also have jobs that go with every one of those businesses. There's one company that came here, it was incorporated in Delaware, but it was in Massachusetts, an energy insurance company. It had been waiting for more than a year to be licensed and processed in Oklahoma. Here in North Carolina, on my watch, it took us 6 weeks, and they're now in business in Wilmington, serving the whole state, and that's in the energy sector. My team, we've eliminated duplicative or unnecessary reports due from businesses, and I've reorganized the department to make it leaner and more efficient. Smart, targeted deregulation is an ongoing activity of mine, not just a campaign slogan. I do it every day, no matter what my party is, because that's what you expect me to do. For 6 years nationally, I've fought the federal government on its encroachment in the health insurance arena. My hands have been tied by federal and state regulations, and that's wrong. And now we hear that the federal government wants to do what? They want to encroach on auto insurance regulation. Are we going to let them do that? Are we going to let them do that? Hell no. Because if you do that, you're going to see our insurance rates for automobile go higher. We already have the lowest here. It will make things worse. It also will limit competition. I'm a fervent advocate for state-based insurance regulation, not the federal government regulating our insurance. And ladies and gentlemen, as I come to a close, I want to tell you I'm also law enforcement. We go against folks who commit insurance fraud. I will tell you this. I trust the law enforcement officers who work for me. When they make arrests, it's based on probable cause. I cannot control what a district attorney does after that, but we have been recognized nationally for the arrests we've done and the work we've done. We have the longest existing fraud-fighting unit in the country. We have 1,500 arrests, 800 convictions, and we've had savings of $75 million back to victims of fraud. I want to continue to be your insurance commissioner. I ask for your vote. If you want to see more savings, more flexibility, more smart, targeted deregulation, then I am your candidate, regardless of party, Wayne Goodwin, for insurance commissioner. God bless you.
Next up, Commissioner of Labor, Cherie Berry, incumbent Republican. Welcome to the stage.
Well, hey! First of all, thank you so much for allowing me to be here today and members of the Council of State with whom I serve. And I can tell you that I appreciate their service because even though we don't always agree on everything, there are instances where we work together on issues. So thank you for allowing that. Hey, if you're concerned about the state of the economy, if you're concerned about unemployed people, if you're concerned about businesses not being able to succeed, then take a good look at this 69-year-old woman. I'm what's standing between all of you who have businesses, all of you who have employees, and federal OSHA. And I'm stronger than I look. Let me give you a couple examples of what I'm talking about. Not too long ago, I received a memo from somebody named Doug at federal OSHA. And he basically said, Commissioner Berry, we want you to take away from companies that have volunteered to participate in your SHARP safety recognition program. We want you to take away their SHARP award. And I'm going, huh? Did they legalize marijuana in Washington? What's this guy smoking? I was incredulous. So I had somebody else read it, and I said, did this say what I think it said? And they said, yes, ma'am, it did. So I fired off a letter to Doug. Now, my mama taught me to be respectful, so I said at the start of every sentence that I wrote back to him, with all due respect, Doug, with all due respect, Doug, I will not be taking away a safety recognition earned by a company who volunteered to pick up the phone and call OSHA and say, please come help me earn this safety recognition. I will not take it away from them. I will not do it. So, once I wrote that letter, we shared it with other states. The other states liked what it said, so they wrote letters of their own, and eventually federal OSHA sent back, never mind. So we won that little victory. It's not easy to do, pushing back against something as big and powerful as the federal government. But we do that here in North Carolina. I do that almost on a daily basis. The other thing I'm pushing back against is raising the penalties for OSHA violations on our businesses in North Carolina. They're struggling enough as it is. Our penalties are high enough. And if you raise those penalties too high, then here's what happens. They take it to court. They take it to court. And that court case can last for years. And until I get a final order from the court, then that hazard that we identified that exists in that company stays in place. And like I said, that can be for years and sits there as a potential way for employees to be hurt. Federal OSHA has lost its mind. I'm sorry. But that provision was in the latest budget bill that was passed, and our people in Washington voted on it. Our Republicans voted on it, and I don't understand why, but I'm going to get to the bottom of it. So they want me to go before our legislature and beg and coerce them to increase the penalties on our businesses in North Carolina. It'll be a chilly day and you know where before I do that. I'm not afraid of them. I'm not afraid of them. Okay, well, here's the important part. North Carolina, over the last 15 years, has brought the injury and illness rate for our workers. This is in the private and public sector. They have brought that number down. It was the highest it had ever been when I took office in 2001. We have worked through compliance, consultative services, teaching and training, and partnerships and alliances, working hand in hand with the business community. And that injury and illness rate, as of today, ladies and gentlemen, is the lowest it's ever been in the history of the state. I wish I could take credit for it, but it's because of all of you all across the state in business, your employees working together with us to make that happen. God bless you and thank you for keeping that number low. That means lives and limbs to our workers in North Carolina, and we're going to get it to 0 with your help. I'm asking for your support in November. I don't have a primary, but go to my website, like me, and follow me on Twitter, and make a donation if you feel so moved. God bless you for all you do, and may He give us the strength, the wisdom, and the courage we all need to get through this mad world that we're existing in. Thank you very much.
Next up, our Secretary of State, Democrat Elaine Marshall.
Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Elaine Marshall, your Secretary of State. I apologize for my voice. I'm coming off of a cold. I seek your support in the November election. Let me tell you a little bit more about myself. I grew up in a family farm in rural north central Maryland. My family was very active in farming. My mother's primary job was to be a farm wife, but she also was the local music teacher and the church organist. So every time the church doors were open, my brother and I were there because Mom was there. 4-H was incredibly important to me growing up. I was successful as a 4-H'er and give them a lot of tribute. I give my time and treasure today to the 4-H program here in North Carolina. I have a degree in textiles and clothing and came to North Carolina right after receiving that degree, taught in the public schools as well as the community college system here in North Carolina. I have been a small business owner, card and gift store, my own decorating business, and co-owner of a college bookstore. But later in life, I decided I needed a few additional skills, and that's when I went to Campbell University School of Law. And I practiced law in rural Lillington, Harnett County. Between my public school experiences and my practice of law, I learned about the hopes and the aspiration and the fears of many of our ordinary people and the dilemmas that they faced. My practice of law was mostly engaged in a little bit of everything, which is what rural lawyers do: civil, criminal. I represented a lot of business interests. I represented them in bankruptcy court because sometimes they were creditors, sometimes they were debtors. I also practiced a little bit of patent law, a little bit of franchising law, and all of the other array of things in between. I'm admitted to North Carolina courts, Eastern District Court, Middle District, and the Supreme Court of the United States of America, and actually had a case to go there, and we won. But I didn't get to argue there, I'm sorry to say. My practice was wide and diverse. As Secretary of State, I find myself explaining mostly what we don't do, because there are a lot of misunderstandings. I am one of 10 Secretaries of State who have nothing to do with the election process. So frequently that's what most people think, and Secretaries of State offices differ from state to state. This one was historically created to be a record keeper actually before there was an official state. And today, fast forward, we are something of a public record keeper. In fact, that is our primary purpose. I am an executive branch administrator. Do not make the laws, but only administer the laws that are given to me from the North Carolina General Assembly, or in some cases from the federal government. I'm not a regulatory agency. I issue no permits whatsoever, and I make no regulations other than those given to me by the General Assembly. We do some licensing as assigned by the General Assembly, but we operate mostly to facilitate business creation, corporations, limited liability companies, and nonprofits. There are many of people who are business folks who never enter the doors of the Secretary of State's office because they might be operating their business as a sole proprietor or as a partnership. And unless that partnership involves some professional licensing, they will never come to us. Our North Carolina licensing laws do require that if we create an organization, a business organization for something like surveyors, architects, doctors, veterinarians, accountants, on, then we have to coordinate with the respective licensing board that regulates that profession. Other administrative duties that we have cover an array of business infrastructure support functions. We are the place where commercial loan documentation is deposited in the state. We support the notary function here in North Carolina, authentication, trademarks, indexing standards for land records for all our 100 county registers of deeds. My job is basically a legal job. I spend 50% or more of my time in legal management, legal case management, civil and criminal, problem solving, and legal processing. In the last several years, I have had the opportunity to write written legal opinions, more or less like a court of appeals, from documents of transcripts from trials. The remainder of my time in office is resource management, whether it's the legislature, whether it's employees, public communication, or that all-important technology. I view my job as Secretary of State to keep North Carolina's competitive business edge. It's not a matter of just how good and efficient we are today and talk to the folks that use the office, bankers, economic developers, lawyers. But my job is to identify the trends, identify the pitfalls, and determine where we need to be, not just in 2016, but in 2020, 2025, so that North Carolina does not lose its competitive business edge. Thank you. I seek your support for re-election in November. Thank you.
And now, welcome to the stage our Superintendent of Public Instruction, Democrat June Atkinson.
Good afternoon to all of you. Thank you for staying around to listen why it is important to elect a competent state superintendent of public instruction. I am running for re-election as state superintendent. I grew up in rural Bedford County, Virginia, attended public schools and was influenced by my grandmother who lived and practiced the Golden Rule. I got a degree in business education at Radford University, a master's degree from Virginia Tech in vocational technical education, and a doctorate in educational leadership and policy at NC State. I started my career in education in one of the most important jobs in our society, a teacher. I was a teacher in Roanoke, Virginia, and I was also a teacher in Charlotte, North Carolina, where it was a part of my work to find my students jobs in the afternoon. And it was my responsibility to make sure that my students left that program knowing that it is important to give a day's worth of effort for a day's work of pay. It was also my responsibility to help them find their way in having a successful career. In 2008, after being elected as state superintendent of public instruction, our then governor decided to appoint a chief executive officer to take the place of the state superintendent of public instruction. I felt that was wrong, and through the help of the former state Supreme Court Justice, Bob Orr, I was able to sue and prevail in the courts to know that that was an unconstitutional act on behalf of our governor. And I will forever be grateful to State Supreme Court Justice Bob Orr. Now, why do I tell you that story? I tell you that story because that shows the grit that I have to be determined and to move forward with the challenges that I know that we will face in public education. I have traveled to all 100 counties in our state. I've visited schools multiple times, and one thing about visiting schools and talking with children is that children will keep your feet firmly on the ground. For example, not too long ago, I was in a school and a little first grader said to me, "You know what? You would be a lot cuter if you didn't wear those glasses." And I am proud that North Carolina has moved from a high school graduation rate of 68% when I took office to an all-time high of nearly 86% this past year. I am proud that our 2015 high school graduates, that of those who graduated, 35% of those had college credit. I am proud that I have worked side by side with Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest, the State Board of Education, and others to have a digital learning plan that will move us into the 21st century. And I was very pleased when Senator Berger released a press release saying that we were making great strides in reading. And as a former teacher, I am never satisfied. And that's why I believe that we have much more work to do. For example, while we have made progress in improving our teacher salaries, we need to do much more. We are not being competitive with our neighboring states, Virginia, Georgia, Tennessee, and South Carolina. We must also need to continue our focus on reading and career technical education, a program that gives students great options and opportunities. In November 2016, North Carolina will make decisions that will impact the next generation of children. Surely, we as North Carolinians can come together to make and agree on decisions that will be crafted with purpose, with aspiration, and that will be coupled with experience, wisdom, and collaboration. One thing that most people say about me when they've had an opportunity to work with me is that I value other people's opinions, and I work to make sure that we have a win-win situation, not only for adults, but most importantly, all of our children in our schools. So that is why I ask for your vote, and I ask you to help me support the next generation of our children who will have opportunities, who can have their dreams come true, and so that education will prepare our students capable of the unpredictable world that we know that they will face. So I am of the party of children, and consequently, I ask you to vote for that woman whose name is June. Please vote for June in November. Thank you very much.
Just an observation. A warm round of applause for all of our Council of State folks that came. How about that glass ceiling? Next up, we're now going to remind you it's 5 minutes per candidate. We're moving into some of the other races now. Our next guest, our next speaker, Greg Brannon, Republican running for U.S. Senate.
Thank you very much for this opportunity to talk. I truly appreciate it. If I say the word America, what do you think about? I guarantee you one thing, it's different with all of us. See, it's potential, it's liberty, it's freedom. It's a bastion of people want to run to. America, that's why we're here. See, America right now is being attacked in the most insidious of ways, from within. Executive orders, judicial activists, a Congress that does not even write the bills, they don't read the bills, but they make sure to exempt themselves and their friends. That's tyranny. The media is their accessory to this crime. See, right now, we're being attacked by, I think, 40 years of bipartisan treason. The Constitution is our government, but it's not the basis of our government. The basis of our government is in our Declaration of Independence. That's where it is self-evident what a legitimate role of a government is. The second paragraph, according to Frederick Douglass, Calvin Coolidge, is the most freeing document other than Scripture ever read. Anything else is more regressive and backwards when men were not free. So we hold these truths to be self-evident that what? That we are endowed by our Creator, not the government, with certain inalienable rights, among those life. That means the moment of conception to natural passing. For those who don't know, I'm an OBGYN. I've delivered 9,000 babies. That means I've seen probably about 3,000 miscarriages. Life begins the moment that miracle occurs. And not just there with the most innocents, but as we get older as well. There are death panels in Obamacare. It's a nightmare. I read every word of it. Liberty, a Latin word of potential, and the pursuit of your happiness and your dreams. That is why we're here. The very next sentence states the legitimate role of a government. And again, the phrase self-evident was put in by Ben Franklin. See, to secure these rights, which rights? The individual's inalienable rights, a government instituted amongst men, that's you and I, driven our just powers for consent to govern, that's you and I. We want trustees and oath keepers to do the Constitution. So I have a question. Would America be better with more constitutional oath keepers or less? Every issue we discuss is because the federal government overstepped their bounds. The state is responsible via the individual to hold the federal government accountable. I'm running for United States Senator to be our ambassador, to chain the federal government. So the laboratory of experiment of liberty in North Carolina can do education, health care, free markets, private property. There is no constitutional oath for OSHA, for EPA, Bureau of Land Management. Either we believe what the Declaration says or we don't. Now I want to know, is it conservative to vote for a debt ceiling increase 9 times? Conservative with these omnibus bills to fund Obamacare and Planned Parenthood? Is it conservative to keep our borders wide open? Is it conservative to arm the moderate jihadists? All that stuff gets to ISIS. Is it conservative to call Senator Cruz's idea of defunding Obamacare the dumbest idea ever heard? All that is Senator Burr's position. See, either we believe in the individual over the collective or we don't. Our founders in North Carolina were first in freedom. We went to war because the tax burden was so overbearing from a centralized government in London, it was worth risking everything. The tax burden was 1%. It was 1%. So what we need to do is understand who we are as individuals, because the kings and queens are the ones who are made in the Creator's image. The solution to the overreach of the government is in the mirror. The moment we act free, we will be free. I prepared to be an OBGYN for 15 years after high school. I read every day, 14 hours a day, prepare for that opportunity. I did the same thing in the last 8 to 10 years on this Constitution. I know it backwards and forwards. I know we did not go to war so the federal government can tell us how much water in our toilet and what kind of light bulbs. GregBrannon.com is our webpage. But I want to do is serve as I had my Hippocratic Oath for the last 30 years, to be the honor of being your servant, not to bring home the bacon, but you keep the whole hog. See, the individual is what the American dream is all about. God bless. Thank you very much.
Next up, U.S. Senate candidate, Libertarian Sean Hall.
Howdy, I'm Sean Hall, Libertarian for U.S. Senate here in North Carolina in 2016 now. Many of you remember me running last time, mostly with my YouTube campaign, and I'm back again because the issues that I talked about before, to stop all war and stop spending more money than we have, they've only gotten worse in the last 2 years. I believe that the perpetual war that we have going on right now is destructive to our economy and corrosive to our essential liberty. Now, my basic formula is pretty simple. I believe that if we have peace, that leads to prosperity. And when people are free to live their lives as they see fit and control the money that they earn, that leads to innovation. And that innovation leads to scarcity. I'm 55 years old. I've seen so much innovation in my own lifetime, even despite a government that tries to run absolutely everything. You walk into the grocery store and you see so many more choices than you had just 15 years ago. And I feel like that if we can, the more that we can eliminate scarcity, the more people will be free to be able to create the kind of world that everybody wants to live in. But it starts with peace. In order to limit government, we have to start with war spending. Now, the federal government takes up a whopping 22.5% approximately of our whole GDP, and of discretionary spending, military is 59% of that. So we really need to start looking at our war spending first in order to rein in the size and scope of government. we need to go back to Washington and Jefferson's sage advice of free trade with all and entangling alliances with none. Now, as part of my campaign to stop all war, I want to talk about stopping culture war as well. With government claiming to have authority over every aspect of our lives, all it serves to do, as you've heard many speakers mention before I came up here, that it just sets people against each other. People are fighting with each other to get that government control set their way. There are so many examples where we have to get government completely out of these questions so that we're not fighting with each other over this, that we can live our lives as we see fit according to our own values in peace with each other. Now, so many of our politics are against. This is one thing that really bothers me about our cultural discourse. I really only want to talk about what I'm for, and I'd like to be able to hear what other people say, what they're for. I mean, the reality is we all have to live together in this country. There is no political solution that starts with the other half of the country dropping dead. We have to get government out of so many issues that divide us so we can be free to live our lives in peace. Now, it's a great year to be a libertarian. I've been at this since 1994 here in North Carolina, and I've been saying the same things all along. And it's great to see libertarian ideas become mainstream and to see people realize that we have to have something different. We have to try something new from what we've been trying before. And there's so many different choices out there. To me, the popularity of Donald Trump and the popularity of Bernie Sanders are one and the same. People are looking for anything other than what we have now. So now is a great opportunity for me to be libertarian, to be able to put out sane, common sense solutions to people that I think they will gravitate towards more. Fortunately, I don't have a primary, so look for me on the November ballot, Sean Haw, Libertarian for U.S. Senate. I'll also be producing more YouTube videos. I have a website, SeanHaw.com. I'm on Twitter at Emperor Sean, and on Facebook at Haw for Senate. Thanks so much for your time. I appreciate it.
Next up, Lon Cecil, candidate for governor, Libertarian.
Good afternoon. Thank you to the Civitas Group for inviting us in today. It's always difficult to get a large group together and sometimes present the libertarian viewpoint and side on things. My name is Lon Cecil. I'm running for governor. I'm retired, so I've got the time to do this. I have worked for many years in paying taxes to the federal government, to the state government, to the local government, to the county government, to the tax assessor, and occasionally to the highway patrolman that decides to force his will on me. The governor position does not have many choices of what they do. The responsibilities are to do a state of the state speech, to tell you how North Carolina is doing the past year, to sit with the Council of State and provide a public input. The governor's office is one of the few that you can call up and say, I want to leave you a message and here's my opinion. And to monitor the legislature and the rest of the administrative groups. He can't pass a law. He can only ask the legislators to do that. He can only direct the opinions toward the various agencies. So it's like any CEO. He's herding cats all of the time. And you can watch the news media for the past year or so, and you realize that sometimes that's not a very effective herding job, but I'm willing to try it. I spent 37 years married to Claudia, so I understand frustration, herding. She had 5 dogs most of the time, so I'm accustomed to lots of things going on trying to distract me. I'm an engineer. I'm not an attorney. I'm not a lawyer. I'm not an educator. I'm an engineer. Engineers are trained to look for the potential solutions to a problem, to identify the cost, to identify the effective ones, to weed out the ones that are not going to be effective, and more importantly, try to identify the unintended consequences of an action. That's the one thing that an attorney and a legislator never seem to do. They pass a law, they hope their name is applied to it, and 5 years later they say, well, geez, I didn't realize that was going to happen, such as with the widow's benefit package that the federal government took up many years ago. House passed it, it went to the Senate, they stripped everything off except the front page. They added 1,000 pages of ACA to it, passed it back to the House because the House hadn't passed that version, and that widow's benefit bill is now the ACA bill, or as many people recall it, the Obamacare. That's legislation. They have no idea the consequences on it. In 2010, I ran against it, District 12 against Mel Watt, and one of the things that would go, I would complain about a provision of ACA that was going to take effect in the next 2 years. And Mel always said, oh, that wasn't in there. Turns out I had read the bill, and yes, it was. The next week he'd come back and he'd say, oh, well, that is in there. And then I'd go to the next one. And we're now down to the medical problems that are going to affect doctors in 2018, in which it becomes very difficult to be a doctor because you are now basically in a military situation. As a governor, we can't control the federal side of it, we control the state side. We want economic growth. We want economic growth in the private sector, not the government sector. We need to minimize taxes. We need to avoid new taxes wherever possible. We need choices in education. A public school is a good choice for roughly 65 to 75% of the students. The other 25 need other choices: vocational training, home education, or what some people lump as vouchers. But we need choices for the parents. And we need environmental protection. We need to leave to our grandkids and great-grandkids a very clean state that they can live in without having to worry about things like lead in the water. The fracking issues are something that I know quite well, coming from a background in Oklahoma, and fracking needs to be regulated, not stopped. Out in Oklahoma, they're having problems with earthquakes now. My father was on teams that were doing the fracking out there in 1950. They didn't have the earthquakes until they started using them as hazardous waste disposal wells. But it's regulation, it's choices, it's the consequences of what you do. Again, my name is Lon Cecil. I'm on the November ballot running for governor, and I would appreciate your consideration. Thank you.
Next up, Attorney General candidate, Republican Jim ONeill.
Good afternoon. I am Jim ONeill, and I am the district attorney in Forsyth County, which encompasses Winston-Salem. I am running for Attorney General in the primary here, March the 15th. I'm going to tell you why you should care about who your next Attorney General is. A few years back in Forsyth County, we had an elderly couple, the Magnus family. Mr. and Mrs. Magnus were delivering Meals on Wheels in their retirement. They came upon a house that they often delivered meals to. They knocked on the door. Mr. Denning did not answer the door, so they knocked again. When they knocked a second time, two individuals armed with guns came running outside the house. They put a gun to Mrs. Magnus's head and shot her in the back of the head. They turned the gun on Bill Magnus. They shot him multiple times in the chest. But for the grace of God, that gun jammed, or otherwise Mr. Magnus would have been gone as well. We brought those individuals back from Virginia. I was the prosecutor who tried that case. The shooter was given death. The non-shooter was given life, which is consistent with North Carolina law. That case was a perfect case. Nothing wrong with that case. Once that case is done, I take that case and I turn it over to the Attorney General. It's the job of the Attorney General to fight for victims, just like the Magnuses, all the way up to the United States Supreme Court. Imagine that the person who's the next Attorney General has never tried a case before, has never prosecuted a murderer before. Never. Because, ladies and gentlemen, that's your choice come March. My opponent has never prosecuted a case before. And I've done everything from barking dogs all the way up to first-degree murder and sent people to death row. And I will tell you this, Angela Height, where are you? Put your hand up. Stand up, Angela. Angela joined with me a few years back. She works for Civitas. She joined with me when we repealed the Racial Justice Act. The Racial Justice Act was never about race, and it was never about justice. It was simply a way to end the death penalty. So I appreciate Angela's help and Civitas' help, and I'm delighted that we got it back on the table again. When I first took over in 2009 as the DA in Forsyth County, we were faced with a jail population of more than 1,300 beds. My county commissioners came to me and said, Jim, you got to do something. You got to get that jail population down. It's killing the taxpayers. So I went in, and within 45 days, we refocused our prosecution. We had people that were spending 30 days in our facility prior to me taking over for sleeping in the park, open containers. And you know who's paying for those jail beds every night? You are, and the people of Forsyth County were. We went in and we said, we're going to focus on violent crime. The people who are going to stick a gun in your face and try and rob you, we're going to focus on taking them out of the population. And that's what we did. Within 45 days, we took that jail population down from 1,300 beds a night down to less than 1,000. And that's the way it has remained ever since. What does that mean to my taxpayers in Forsyth County? The math is $80 a jail bed times 300 beds, $24,000 a night. I got news for you. My county commissioners do not want me to run for Attorney General. They want me to stay there in Forsyth County and continue keeping people safe. We're in dangerous times, ladies and gentlemen. Dangerous times. The next Attorney General in North Carolina needs to be a prosecutor who is battle-tested and ready to go. Someone who has proven over and over and over again that they are the toughest prosecutor in the state, and the Attorney General, who is the top prosecutor in the state, the top law enforcement agent. North Carolina needs a tough prosecutor in that position. I am the only one in this race, Republican or Democrat, the only one who is an actual prosecutor. Jim ONeill, on March the 15th, a proven track record of keeping people safe. And I humbly ask for you to remember this when you go to vote. Jim ONeill has always kept people safe, and I'll do it on the state level as well. Thank you all.
Next up, candidate for state auditor, Republican Chuck Stuber.
Thank you. Excuse me, I'm Chuck Stuber. I'm running for the North Carolina State Auditor position, and I appreciate you letting me come and speak to you today. I do not have a primary opponent, so I'm the Republican candidate for this very important position in state government. Let me tell you a little bit about myself. I'm a CPA, I'm an attorney. I graduated from NC State with a degree in accounting, graduated from UNC Law School, and I was a special agent with the FBI for 28 years. In that time that I was with the FBI, I worked a multitude of white-collar crime cases. I was case agent on a $300 million Ponzi scheme case. I've worked investment fraud cases. I've worked government fraud cases. And here in North Carolina, I led a number of investigations of high-profile public officials. I was the case agent on the Jim Black case, the Mike Easley case, the John Edwards case, the Frank Balance case, his son Gary Balance, who was a judge, the Kevin Gettings case, the Garland Garrett case, and a number of other high-profile public corruption cases. So I know a little bit about corruption here in North Carolina. When I left the FBI, when I retired a couple of years ago, I took a job at the North Carolina State Board of Elections. In that capacity, we referred over 30 cases to district attorneys across the state on different types of election fraud. As I say, I know a lot about fraud, waste, abuse, and corruption. I would encourage you to go to my website, www.chuckstuber.com, learn more about my career and about me. And the reason I'm running for the state auditor position, I consider it to be one of the most important positions in state government. And again, that's why I'm putting this effort into running for this office. To boil it down, if you're a tax-paying citizen, you should be concerned about who the state auditor is. And that's because the state auditor is the person, we can't do anything about you having to pay taxes. I'm sure nobody likes paying taxes, but we can make sure your tax dollars are spent the right way, that they're not misused, they're not stolen, they're not wasted, they're not taken by fraud, and that they're used for the purposes that they're intended. And like I say, I believe my skills and my experience with the FBI will translate very well to the state auditor position. Let me just tell you a couple more things. When I came to North Carolina, I actually grew up in North Carolina. The FBI sent me to Denver, Colorado, then to Washington, D.C., and then I got back here back in 1998, and I was brought back here specifically to start a public corruption program because there hadn't been much of anything done in that area in about 20 years. And I got back here, and I talked to a lot of folks that basically said, you're wasting your time. There's not any corruption here. Again, it was 1998. And as I say, in the coming years, we prosecuted and convicted Jim Black, the Speaker of the House. We had cases that resulted in the prosecution of Mike Easley, the governor, John Edwards, former senator and presidential candidate, again, Congressman Frank Balance, Kevin Gettings, lottery commissioner, former Secretary of State Garland Garrett, and a number of others. When I went to the Board of Elections, I was told the same thing. There's not any election fraud. And in a year and a half, we referred over 30 cases to district attorneys across the state, and including a case against the mayor of Charlotte, Patrick Cannon, who after being convicted in an FBI corruption case decided it was a good idea to go vote as a convicted felon before he went to prison. So, as I say, you know, I've got a lot of experience. As I say, we're seeing different kinds of corruption, fraud, waste, abuse. And I know I can have the similar kind of success in the state auditor position, taking the state auditor to their office to a higher level as far as finding ways that your money's being misused and wasted and taken by fraud. That's the easy part for me. I'm very confident I can do this job and be great at it. The hard part is I'm new to the political game, so I need money, I need fundraising, I need people to volunteer to help me get my message out. I need people to vote for me and tell people that they know about me. If you think I've got a good background and will do an excellent job, spread the word, and please help me get elected. And I promise you, if I'm elected, I will do a great job for you as a state auditor, and I will work tirelessly to protect your hard-earned tax dollars. Thank you very much for having me. God bless you.
Next up, Commissioner of Agriculture candidate Walter Smith, Democrat. Where is Walter? There he is.
Today's meal was brought to you by agriculture and the hard-working farmers that work long hours to provide you with safe, affordable, and nutritious food. I'm Walter Smith. I'm running for Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. It is an honor to be with you today. I was born and raised on a small farm in eastern North Carolina. We grew cotton, corn, tobacco, and soybeans. We also raised hogs and beef cattle. I attended NC State University, where I received a degree in agriculture engineering. I taught vocational agriculture before I went to work with the U.S. Department of Agriculture, administering federal farm programs and working with farmers on a daily basis. I'm now retired after 33 years, and I'm back where I started. I own and operate a small farm in Yadkin County. I know firsthand the problems and issues facing farmers today. I grew up with two loving parents, a brother and a sister. Some of the best times I had growing up in rural North Carolina were going hunting with my father. We lost him about 2 years ago, but those are memories that I will always cherish. He taught me at an early age how to shoot and handle a gun safely. He also taught me to appreciate hard work. Lots of times on the farm we would have to get up at 5 o'clock in the morning, take a barn of tobacco out, load it on a trailer so we would have an empty barn to fill that day. Then after everybody else went home, my brother, sister, and father and I would unload that trailer to put in a pack house to be graded and hand-tied, which people don't remember anymore, and put in a basket for sale at the warehouse. A lot of times I wanted to quit, because my friends were out playing basketball. So I asked my father one day, I said, why can't we quit when it's 5 o'clock like everybody else? He looked at me and all he said was, on the farm, we quit when the job is finished. Now, as commissioner, I can assure you that I will be working and fighting for you 24/7. I will not quit when the going gets tough or the hours get long. But my parents also believed in us kids getting a good education. They sacrificed for my brother and sister and I. When I got through with college, I had all the answers. If you didn't believe me, all you had to do was ask me. And I kept telling my father how to run that farm, how to make it more profitable. Finally, he sat me down one day. He said, son, education's important. But there's one thing to remember. Don't ever let it get in the way of good common sense. So I've tried to remember that. My parents also told us the golden rule to treat others like we would want them to treat us. Agriculture is the number one industry in North Carolina. In 2012, it generated $78 billion. In 2014, it only generated $76 billion. It's going in the wrong direction. While the rest of the economy has been growing in North Carolina, agriculture has been decreasing. We need to embrace new technology that can make farms more profitable. We need to form better partnerships between the Department of Agriculture, land-grant universities, commodity groups, and private companies. We also need to stop over-regulating the agriculture industry. And we need to cut the red tape that farmers have to endure to sign up for state and federal farm programs. Over-regulation can kill a farmer quicker than anything else I know of. As Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services, I will work with all the citizens of North Carolina to streamline these rules and regulations and procedures that are now a burden to some of our farmers. Farmers are the heart and soul of the rural communities, and rural communities are the bedrock of this state. We all love the beauty of rural North Carolina, the open spaces, the crops growing in the fields, the cattle grazing in the pastures, and the fresh fruits, nuts, and vegetables you can buy directly from the farmers. However, our rural communities are growing smaller every year. According to the Department of Agriculture, we lost over 2,000 farms between 2010 and 2014. We must find ways to save our family farms. What happens when they're gone? We need to find more alternative crops that can generate decent profit on small acreages. We need to expand our organic and sustainable farms. We need to form partnerships with retailers and local chambers of commerce to promote local foods. We must change the way we market our crops. Studies have shown that the face of the consumer is changing. They want to know where their food came from, who grew it, and how it was grown. We must do a better job of personalizing the farmer and telling the story behind the food that they sell. It's time for a change. We need new ideas and innovative solutions to the problems facing agriculture in North Carolina. Potential for growth is unlimited if we have the right leadership. I ask for your support and your vote in November. To find out more about my issues and my solutions to the problems we have, you can visit www.votewaltersmith.com. I am Walter Smith. I'm running for Commissioner of Agriculture and Consumer Services. I do not have a primary opponent, but I will see you on the ballot in November. God bless and have a great weekend.
Next up, Commissioner of Insurance candidate, Republican Joe McLaughlin.
Good evening, ladies and gentlemen. Thank you for staying. Hopefully we have our friends from the John Locke here and some other non-candidates here. My name is Joe McLaughlin. I'm going to take about 3 minutes to talk about 3 whys and give you back the gift of time. Why insurance? Very simply, insurance is too important to leave to the professional politicians. No offense to my new friend Wayne Goodwin, but that's kind of what Wayne was. If anybody here back in 2008 when Wayne filed, by pretty much good old boy sleight of hand, everyone thought Jim Long was going to run. May he rest in peace. Everyone thought he would run again. In fact, one of my challengers on the primary encouraged me to run back then. I didn't want to be a sacrificial lamb against Jim Long. But at the 11th hour, Jim Long did not file, and the incumbent did. And notwithstanding the many accomplishments he rattled off, I almost spilt my drink when he talked about, I'm in favor of state-based insurance regulation. Really? From the same guy who is brought to the White House to be rewarded for his implementation of Obamacare? Conspicuously absent from his remarks today. Why insurance? It's too important to leave to professional politicians. And everything touches insurance, from the house to the car to the trucks and trains that bring our goods to the market. It touches everything, and you can't leave it to a politician. Why me? I'm a retired infantry officer. My career started at Fort Bragg long ago. Other than jumping out of airplanes, the next best thing was meeting my wife, who is a native of Charlotte. My daughter is here with us today, Caitlin. Give a shout out, Caitlin. Her brain did not turn to mush even though she went to Chapel Hill. So I'm a retired infantry officer. I love to fight. I proudly wear my master parachutist wings. I'm Ranger qualified infantry officer. I like nothing more than a good mix-up. My sport when I'm not working is competitive Olympic-style fencing. I go down to the Durham Fencing Club here. I love a good fight. I relish the thought of fighting for you in November and fighting for you in Raleigh. My wife is from Charlotte. She's a registered nurse. She still gives patient care in our local community hospital. Air Force Academy graduate, went to the Naval Postgraduate School, and for the last 22 years I provided financial planning services in North Carolina, in Jacksonville, outside Camp Lejeune. I'm a certified financial planner. I have tabletop conversations about insurance every day. My competitors can't say that. My challengers in the primary. Every day. I did it Thursday before I left for this event. I will do it tomorrow, Sunday, when I meet with some more clients. I'm in the mix with insurance. And why you? A lot of candidates are not here today. No offense to you all, but today there are probably 15 different Republican events that they needed to be to. I chose to be here with you because you are the peer influencers here. You are the leaders in the conservative community, and you inspire me. If I hadn't come here today, I wouldn't have met this wonderful couple right here, Mr. and Mrs. Weems. Mr. Weems. This is an amazing man in a part of life, in a phase of life where most of us are wondering how much golf we can play. Mr. Weems is giving back at North Carolina Central, mentoring young African-American men how to be entrepreneurs. Can I give a hand for Mr. Weems? If I hadn't come to this event, I wouldn't have met Lieutenant Colonel Testerson, who many of you heard. And he's a great warrior himself, but his mother and father, Colonel Testerson and his lovely wife, they raised 4 children who went into the military. And Colonel Testerson Sr., he flew B-52s downtown in Hanoi during the Vietnam War, a great American. Why you? Why you? You are the leaders, the opinion shapers. We're on the web at Joe4NC, Joe number 4NC. I invite you to go see our Facebook or our webpage. Please share it with your friends. With your help, we'll win next week. With your help, I will fight and win for you in Raleigh next November. Thank you.
Next up, Commissioner of Insurance candidate Ron Pierce, Republican.
Good afternoon, everybody. Thank you, Civitas, for inviting me to come and speak. First of all, my name is Ron Pierce. I'm a general contractor out of Charlotte. I'm one of the guys that actually has to put your home back together after a water loss, fire. It's kind of hard when the insurance companies outright lie to every homeowner that I ever talked to about how much they are and how much they are not going to go ahead and pay these people to put their homes back together. And I said lies, and I meant lies. It's directly against the law. I have gone ahead and I have filed several lawsuits against the insurance companies themselves on behalf of my homeowners. There's 3 things that we need to change. First things first, we need to hold the Department of Insurance accountable for their actions.
of which is not being done today. Second of all, we actually have to have our people in this regulatory body not to be in bed with the insurance companies. That's exactly what's going on today. It's called corruption. It's called manipulation. And there's 20 other nice choice words that I can say that it is. But I won't. I'm a very blunt man. When I see corruption, I tell it to it like it is. I'm not here for it. I'm not here for corporate America. I'm not here for the insurance companies. I'm here as a public advocate. 2012, I've been at war with the Department of Insurance way before 2012. But in 2012, I went ahead and I started writing letters of complaint against the insurance companies to and for and about my customers on the homes that I was trying to put back together. 20 letters of complaint just in 1 year alone. I also went ahead and I wrote 20 letters of complaint to the Attorney General's office. Does anybody actually think that I got a response? Oh, yes, I did. Oh, yes, ma'am. Nobody got investigated but me. Yes, ma'am. I went ahead and I faced down 108 false felony counts of obtaining property under false pretense, issued by Wayne Goodwin and 10 of their deputy commissioners. How would you, as a person, like to face down 324 years? Have I got everybody's attention now? 324 years in prison I faced down. My wife is still afraid that somebody's going to show up at our door in the middle of the night and rearrest me. How would you like that going on in your marriage? These are all false charges. I faced them down. They were all dropped April 2015 by the prosecutor in Mecklenburg County. No probable cause to bring this against me to very beginning. No probable cause. Having said that, on Friday, I brought a copy for Civitas to make sure that everybody knew. On Friday, I went ahead and had my attorney file in federal court a multi-million-dollar lawsuit against Wayne Goodwin and 10 of the deputy commissioners for incompetency at office, let alone what they've done to me for false arrest and false persecution. I'm here to tell you, I'm here to change the way insurance companies are doing business in this state. I don't care who I have to go through to make sure it's done. I'll do it in court. I'll run for office. I'll embarrass them. Just remember, piercecampaign.com, and I have another website. It's called stopbadinsurance.com. Thank you. I appreciate everybody's attention.
Next up, Commissioner of Labor candidate Maisie Ferguson, Democrat.
Thank you. It's a pleasure to be here this afternoon with this group. And of course, we are almost a contradiction in force because you are declared conservatives, and I must confess that I'm a declared liberal. But I'm here because I want to share with you my perspective. It all goes like this. In a stormy night in the middle of the day, two blind boys went out to play. Back to back they faced each other, drew their knives and shot one another. The deaf man, he heard the noise, went out and killed the dead boys. And if you don't believe this tale is true, ask the blind man. He saw it too. Contradictions and paradoxes. That's what we've been witnessing to this afternoon. I'm running for the Labor Commissioner, and I would like to be the next Labor Commissioner for North Carolina. And I'm aware that my ultimate opponent is still, I think she's still here. She was here, yeah. there. And so you've probably read in the news and record, certainly in the Charlotte Observer, certainly in the News and Observer for Raleigh, about all of the shortcomings of the present incumbent. Particularly, I'm concerned about the way the workers are being treated, and that the Council of State is a good place for someone to hear about the conditions of the workers of North Carolina. They deserve to have a speaker. Most of you have spoken about the position that you're running for, and in every case, I did not hear anybody speaking for the workers of North Carolina. Many of them are suffering from complaints about having wages taken and stolen from them, and appealing to the Commission on Labor and not receiving any response or getting negative response. Many of them have complained because they're not being paid properly in their places where they work. So many of them do not have. Let me get. I want to talk about how they're being. At the Council of State, you know that the Council of State is the place where 10 people sit down, and we've heard from many of them today, representatives today, and they make decisions and recommendations to the legislature based on the area from which they run. Well, at the Department of Labor, there's no one speaking for the workers. That is a perspective that is missing in the North Carolina Council of State. And it is my intent to bring that perspective to the Council of State, because I have worked for the workers all of my life. I began working as a sleep-in maid when I was 18 years old. And from sleep-in maid, I ended up, of course, with a degree in law. I'm an attorney. I've been an attorney since 1978, passed the bar the first time, and have been practicing law for quite a while. So I'm aware that I'm a former attorney for North Carolina A&T State University, where I represented the other side. You know, of course, generally in my practice of law, I represent plaintiffs. But with North Carolina A&T, I did represent the defendants as well. I have looked at this labor problem and seen that a lot of the workers of North Carolina don't have spokesmen that understand what laborers go through. A lot of us think of, you $15 an hour, for example. We think that's outrageous if we're conservatives. We say we don't have that kind of money. But I haven't heard anybody from this perspective say anything about the fact that these billions of dollars of profits from corporations was not fair to the workers. Those people who produce those profits need to also be able to share in them. And that is not happening in North Carolina. I want to see workers represented at the Council of State so that when they bring their issues to the Department of Labor, they are being responded to. And those thousands of people who raise issues about being not getting what they want, or complaining and having their complaints ignored or denied, that some of them will be able to get their complaints heard. And that's not happening right now. Because let me tell you something. If the workers get angry, if the workers stop working, if that happens, guess what? We shut down. People worried about shutdown. It will shut down if the workers don't work for you. I want to work for the workers. Thank you.
Secretary of State candidate, Republican Michael LaPaglia.
Good afternoon, everyone. I am Michael LaPaglia, and I am running as a Republican for Secretary of State of North Carolina. I usually get 2 questions after I tell people something like that. LaPaglia, is that Italian? No, that's Sicilian. Freedom fighters in Italy, too. And the way my Sicilian name is attached to me is that in 1905, my great-grandparents left Palermo and immigrated through Ellis Island into New York City. And once they were in New York City, they started a family. And they had 4 children here in the United States. They moved on to Chicago from New York. They had a life but it ended up not being the one that they thought they were going to find here. So they moved back to Palermo. Now, the 4 children they had here in the United States, as they grew up, one of them was my great-grandfather, said, you know what, we want to go back to the United States and take another swing at that life. And they all did come back, and they had very good lives. My great-grandfather got in with an industrialist who started a pencil factory in the Bronx, New York. It's called the Empire Pencil Factory, after the Empire State. In 1935, that factory needed to be closer to raw materials and a source of cheaper labor. That sound familiar to everybody who's ever been in business? And so, in the middle of the Depression, my great-grandfather, the plant foreman, moved the plant from the Bronx, New York, to Shelbyville, Tennessee, which would become Pencil City, USA. I grew up as a 7, 8, 9-year-old boy, like my son is today, going through the pencil factory. I can remember inking the rollers that printed the Snoopy pencils in the department that my grandmother ran for the factory. I've been around business all of my life. That pencil factory at that time was run by the Hasbro family, the Hasenfelds. I have seen big business from both the administrative view and from the worker's view. I have also been in business with my father for the better part of it, now for 25 years, consulting nationwide with museums and visitor centers and historic sites, building things like the Louisville Slugger Museum, working at places like Mystic Seaport, the Museum of America and the Sea, the Smithsonian Institution. I have worked across this country with all levels of government, federal, state, and local, with corporations big and small, with nonprofit groups, with civic leaders, trying to help people understand the context of our past and how it can illuminate our future. I want to bring that business experience combined with the political experience I haven't told you about yet, and I'll tell you about that now. I grew up in leadership training. I was a college Republican at Emory University in Atlanta, Georgia. That's Newt's alma mater, by the way. I actually held the same seat in college Republicans that Newt Gingrich did. And then when I left college, took some time away from the family business, and I worked for Fred Thompson of Tennessee. Growing up, Fred Thompson had been something of a legend in Tennessee. He and Lamar Alexander straightened out corrupt government in Tennessee. When I was a little boy, our Governor Ray Blanton was selling pardons to convicted murderers, rapists, and criminals. But Fred Thompson and Lamar Alexander straightened that out in the late 70s. And then in 1994, I got to travel statewide with Fred Thompson 24/7. I got to work with his mentor, Howard Baker. And I got to learn politics and statesmanship, because that's what those guys were statesmen. And I want to be a statesman. So I want to bring all of that experience home to North Carolina now, where myself, my family, my sister and her family live, where our ancestors fought the Revolutionary War, where we need a better Secretary of State's office that is more responsive to businesses, that makes it easier, cheaper, and faster for businesses to be created and businesses to grow. I am Michael LaPaglia. I am running as a Republican for Secretary of State. I would appreciate your vote in this primary and again in the fall. I look forward to seeing you again. Thank you very much.
Superintendent of Public Instruction candidate, Republican J. Wesley Sills.
Good afternoon, everybody. My name is Wes Sills. It's great to be with y'all today. I was in the mountains this morning doing some stumping. This is a big state we live in, but it's good to be back on my side of the state. I'm from Harnett County. Now, you'll see me on the ballot as J. Wesley Sills, and Above me, you will see a lawyer, and below me, you'll see a pediatrician. All right, I'm the only classroom teacher that is running for state superintendent of public instruction. All right, I'm the son of a elementary school teacher, and I teach high school civics and economics and American history. All right, so that gives me a unique perspective and what I can bring to this race. I can assure you that teaching is a very hard profession, and sadly, one of our opponents is on record saying it is not a hard profession. So not only does she insult 95,000 school teachers and my late mother, she also, how is she going to lead the profession when she thinks it's an easy job? So just keep that in mind. But what I bring to the table is the fact I see students every day. I see students who are doing great. I see students who are struggling. And those students that are struggling, we don't really help them. And those students that are doing great, we kind of hold them back. So we've got to return to a student-centered instruction. And that's going to take some leadership and some bold ideas. So if you go to my website, jwesleyseals.org, you will see that platform. Now, I can't discuss with it all of you today because of the time constraints, but there's a lot of good ideas, jwesleyseals.org, and you can see that for yourself. Well, one thing I do want to talk to you about is increasing literacy education. Now, we test our students way too much. So I want to roll back that testing. And I want to use the savings from rolling back that testing and put it into more literacy education. You see, if students struggle reading and they are not on grade level, why do we wait till 3rd grade to ensure this? We need to start in kindergarten helping these kids learn how to read. Because if they can't learn how to read, they will not be able to read to learn. And that is a recipe for a lifetime of misery. And we can do better, and we will do better. Another thing is vocational training. I love vocational training. Now, Common Core is out, so we are writing new standards right now, and those standards need to include vocational education. But why wait till high school? Let's start in middle school with that. So let's retool our curriculum to help these kids and meet them where they are, again, being student-centered education, student-centered education. Now, this vocational training should be 3D printing, high-tech manufacturing, agro-science, lots of other things we do, the trades. But again, why wait till high school? Let's start in middle school. But regardless if you're on a college-bound track or a vocational-bound track, you still need to be a well-rounded citizen. So of course we're going to teach math, science, English, social studies. We can't forget about the arts. And of course, foreign language is important. So, we are going to have to retool our curriculum, and we can do that with some bold ideas and some bold leadership, which I have. Now, one thing, we got to be good stewards of taxpayer money. Do y'all know that your taxpayer, your hard-earned dollars pay for a test, college admissions test called the ACT that every 11th grader takes in this state? Now, these kids, some of them don't want to go to college. They don't need to go to college, but they're forced to take this test. That's your money being wasted. So we've got to be good stewards of taxpayer money. So when we talk about buying big computer programs and computers and other classroom initiatives, we need to follow the dollar and see who wins and who loses in those transactions. We need to ensure that taxpayers, parents, teachers, and students always win, not lobbyists and not bureaucrats, okay? So I'm the only one on the stump that's really talking about that. All right, so again, jwesleyseals.org, lots of good ideas. Thank you for your vote. But I'll close with saying this. I'm a new parent. I've got, my baby girl was born February 17th. Can't wait to get home to her and give her a big hug. We're 2,000 days from the start of kindergarten. My friends, we got a lot of work to do, all right? And as a classroom teacher, as a son of a teacher, and nephew of teachers, I see every day what works and does not work for our students. So thank you for your time. Have a safe trip home. God bless.
Superintendent of Public Instruction candidate, Republican Mark Johnson.
Well, thank you everyone for sticking around to listen to all of us candidates. It really means a lot because we are traveling the state spreading our message. If you give me 5 minutes, I hope I can make it interesting for you. My name is Mark Johnson. I started my career as a public school teacher right here in North Carolina. I started my career at West Charlotte High School. West Charlotte is one of the most challenged schools in North Carolina. I signed up to go teach there to learn what kind of ed reform we have to do to make an impact in North Carolina. Now I serve on the Winston-Salem Forsyth County Board of Education. And I'm a father of a young daughter who's about to enter school. I see the challenges facing education in our state from every aspect, and that's why I'm running for this office. It's very nice that the incumbent came and spoke to us, but she's been there for 10 years, and she's been at the Department of Public Instruction for 40. And what's been happening for the past 40 years in education is not cutting it, and we are letting students down. We need ed reform. We have members of the General Assembly who are working hard to get us education reform, and when it gets to that department, it gets stuck in its tracks. So that is why I'm running for this office. I want to put more power in the hands of good local school leaders. Good local school leaders know what their schools need. They know what their teachers need. They know what their students need. Good parents make the difference for students. But all learning at school occurs in the classroom between the teacher and the student. And that's where we need to focus. So the differences between me and the other opponents in the primary. Yes, vocational education. Vocational education is extremely important. It doesn't matter if you're digging ditches after high school or building rocket ships. With hard work, you can reach the American dream. And we need to encourage those students who don't want to go to college to still be able to have the tools that they need to succeed. We give AP courses to students going to college. That's so they can have a head start when they get there. We need to be focused on vocational education to give students who want to go into a trade after high school a head start so they can go and work at Caterpillar, or they can be plumbers or welders, and they can make a good living, make good money, go buy themselves a house, and they can make their American dream. One of our opponents in this primary does not support vocational education. I also support 100% Lieutenant Governor Dan Forrest in his efforts to increase the smart access to technology in every classroom. Technology is going to be a game changer. It is going to connect students to lessons and materials that they might not otherwise have. In Wake County might have the resources that smaller rural counties don't have. So technology will give those students the opportunities. It's the 21st century. We have to prepare our students for 21st century challenges. So please remember my name. I am Mark Johnson. My catchphrase is, let's make our schools remarkable. Thank you.
Next up, candidate for State Treasurer, Dale Falwell, Republican.
Is that because I'm last? Thank you. My name is Dale Falwell. It's great to be here. You know, some of you know my wife, Cynthia, and Cynthia is an artist and a musician, so that when she does something, you can hear it or you can see it. Over the last 10 years, I've worked on the invisible things that affect North Carolina and its economy. And if you go to the website, dalefalwell.com, you can see where I've saved lives, saved minds, and saved money for North Carolinians over the last 10 years. Somebody introduced me the other day and said that over the last 10 years, I may have saved more lives, more minds, and more money for North Carolinians than anyone else. Now, before you take that as an arrogant comment, you need to understand that is a result of listening. Good leadership in this state is about being a good listener. So when volunteer fire departments say they have a problem, I listen. When we have an issue with organ donation, I listen. When we have an issue with kids going to school too early, I listen. I also listen to the businesses in North Carolina who were afflicted by many invisible things that were driving businesses out of North Carolina. One issue was the workers' comp reform, which I worked on 5.5 years ago. Now, it's going to be hard for you to see this in the back, but these are the workers' comp laws of the 3 states that border North Carolina. These were yours. The reason I bring that example to you is that everybody gets up and talks about being a conservative, but they've never conserved anything. They talk about being a fixer, but they've never fixed anything. You can't call yourself a fixer unless you deconstruct something to understand what makes it work. And the bottom line is that the Goodyear Tire and Rubber Company in Fayetteville, North Carolina, when I first started working on this issue, had to produce 3,000 tires per day to pay the workers' comp premium of that plant for that day. Now, this idea came from me from a granite maker in Mount Airy, North Carolina, where I went up there to buy a headstone for my father-in-law. Good leadership is about good listening. Over the last 3 years, I've been the Assistant Secretary of Commerce, and as you've heard through this conference on numerous occasions, 3 years ago next week, Governor McCrory handed me $2.7 billion worth of debt. The third highest amount of debt in the United States. And not only was the agency bankrupt, but it was the most broken agency in the United States in terms of the quality of what it produced, even behind Guam and Puerto Rico for the last 14 years. Backlogs, national highs, phone calls being answered, national lows, debt, all the things that you can imagine going on with the state agency was going on with the Division of Employment Security. So what happened over the last 32 months? What happened was things that have never occurred in North Carolina or national history before. The $2.7 billion in debt was completely paid off, and $1 billion surplus was built in 32 months. So the point of that is simple. Why does that matter to you? The reason that matters to you is as long as that debt was outstanding, the North Carolina employers were paying FUTA, federal unemployment, and state unemployment surcharges on all their employees, which were making us competitively disadvantaged against 42 other states, including our border states. In addition to that, we were a national leader in answering phone calls and working down backlogs. Now, how did that happen? Very quickly, 3 things, all of which start with the letter P. The people who are the employers of North Carolina who pay taxes into your unemployment system, all the credit for paying off the debt, the $283 million in interest and building the $1 billion surplus belong to the employers of North Carolina. Secondly is something called House Bill 4, which the legislators across North Carolina voted for and the governor signed, but I had the responsibility of implementing it. And so often the frustration that you're hearing in the political world now is that laws are passed, but agencies don't follow them. I follow the law. Lastly, are people. We had 650 people in our agency who nothing good had been said about them. And I always bring the bowling pin here to represent that if you were trying to turn around any level of government and you think you're in a game where you have 120 balls to knock down 120 pins, you're in the wrong game. When you're trying to apply conservative ideology, you have to have clarity of thought and have things in the right sequence and figure out how to hit that pin to knock down 7 others. That is how you reform state government. Now I'm applying for the job to be the state treasurer, and I'm going to ask for 30 extra seconds. The state treasurer, according to this book, The Keeper of the Public Purse, has more constitutional and statutory responsibilities and duties than any other elected official in the state of North Carolina except maybe the governor. And the reason I'm applying for this job is that we don't have a $3 billion problem. Now we have a $30 billion unfunded health care liability. And my background as a blue-collar worker, my background as a white-collar worker, and my background as a public service makes me uniquely qualified. We were a national leader in reforming workers' compensation. We were a national leader in reforming unemployment insurance. And we're going to be a national leader in paying off this $30 billion unfunded health care liability. My name is Dale Falwell. My time is up, and I want you to repeat after me. Give them Dale. Thank you very much.